in the town and asked him quite directly if he had a little white girl in his care. He lied to me with coolness and plausibility, but just for a fraction of a second I had caught him off his guard and I did not quite believe him. I was still more convinced something was queer because I saw him no more from that time and understood that he had disappeared from the vicinity. But the Everglades are the one fastness left in this country where fugitives may successfully conceal themselves, and I knew it was useless and worse than useless to pursue Jerry into them. I saw and heard no more of him till a few days ago in Jasper. I got that fugitive an almost unbelievable glimpse of him. And so it's all led to this. It would be a great satisfaction to me, Jerry, if you could tell me your side of the story and clear up a few of these hazy points." Jerry moved in his chair uneasily and cast a half apologetic glance at the company. "I ain't used to talking," he faltered. "I can only say as I took up with this yere Harry Wyndham, he called himself, about 14 years ago. He wants a guide to go into the deepest part of the Glades and he wants to take his wife and little un with him. I says it's unusual and probably risky for 'em, but he says no, they're going to all live there and not go back to town life no more. He says he wants to study and things like that, but I suspects from the first that he's got something on his conscience, probably a big forgery or something, and wants to keep out of sight. I seen a lot like that. The Glades is a place for 'em. We goes into the deepest part and camps there and he reads and writes and stares at things through a glass and all that. But he never goes out to the edge of the Glades, not even for supplies when we need 'em. I does all that. After we'd been there about a year, the young lady, his wife, steps on a rattlesnake one day, poor thing, and dies next day from it. We couldn't have saved her. I thought he'd go crazy then, but still he won't go back to the towns. We buries her in the swamps and he doesn't know what to do with the little un, so I tells him I really got married to an Indian girl a while before I met up with him. She's with her people yet in a camp about 50 miles north, but if he likes I'll go get her and she can keep house for us and take care of the baby. He just jumps at it and so I brought Juanita there. About a year or two later he gets sick himself. I don't know what ailed him, but he just seemed to pine away like. He didn't read and write no more, just sat staring out over the Glades and playing with the baby sometimes. He makes me promise before the end that I'll never let the child go away from the Glades or grow up where people was. There's reason, he says, but you'll never understand it. He gives me all the money he has left for her. I wants to get a doctor for him, but he won't have it, and one morning I finds him dead, right there in his bed, as if he'd slept away. After a while I went back to my old work of being a guide, but I never let the child go near the towns. I never knowed she'd learn to read. I was afeared for her to get any book learning, for fear she'd find out. I didn't never want her to answer for her father's crime, whatever it was. I loved the little thing. Juanita and I did. If I'd a knowed – he swallowed hard. Then he went on. I married that cracker woman lately and come up north 'cause I ain't well. Something's ailin' me and I don't know what. But I couldn't live in the Glades no more and I wanted little Dell to be cared for, somehow, if anything happened to me. I guess it wasn't a very lucky move. He smiled wanly at the first and only joke he had ever tried to make. "It was the luckiest thing you could have done, Jerry," laughed Mr. Tredwell. "And now as you've cleared up everything for us capitally, it only remains for me to see those papers you have in your possession, Bernice and Sidney, and prove beyond a legal peradventure by verifying the writing that the Harry Wyndham of the Everglades was the Harry Colfax of New York, my client. Have I your permission to examine them, Miss Delight? These two friends of yours have been very faithful to their promise to you in forbidding me to have the briefest glimpse of them." Delight stared at him with an uncomprehending look and murmured something inarticulate. So astonishing had these revelations been, and withal so unexpected that even now she had not taken them in nor realized their bearing on her own affairs. Jerry himself was regarding confusedly the packet of papers that Bernice had taken from her handbag. "May I show these to Mr. Tredwell now?" asked Bernice quietly of Delight. The sound of her familiar voice seemed to rouse the girl at last out of her daze. "Why, yes," she stammered. "Why, I reckon you can. I don't seem to know yet quite what it 's all about, but I don't want any harm to come to Uncle Jerry." "Don't have the slightest fear of that, dear child!" exclaimed Mr. Tredwell as he received the papers. "Your Uncle Jerry deserves only the highest praise and commendation for what he has done. It was only through an unavoidable misapprehension on his part that he was forced to play the role of a constant fugitive, and a stupid mistake on mine that I did not recognize him for the faithful guardian he's always been. But we're going to straighten all that out now." While he was examining the papers and comparing them with old letters he had taken from his wallet, Delight turned to Jerry and rested her head on his shoulder. Some inkling of the truth was at last beginning to dawn on her. "Are they going to take me away from you?" she whispered. "I reckon they are, honey," he returned hoarsely. "If you got all the money they say, and your daddy wa'n't no criminal like I always thought, then there ain't no reason in the world why you should have to stay any longer with old Jerry Sawgrass." "I won't go! I won't go!" she cried then, flinging herself upon him in a passion of tears. "You got to, honey," he soothed her, smoothing her dark hair. "I can't keep you here any longer now." It was at this crisis that Mrs. Conant stepped into the breach. "If Mr. Tredwell and Jerry will agree to it," she began, "I should like to invite Delight to come and make a stay with Bernice and myself. We are to go into our new bungalow in a day or two, and I know we shall both enjoy having her with us. And as she knows Bernice so well, the companionship will help her to bear her loneliness in leaving her accustomed environment." "Nothing could be better!" cried Mr. Tredwell, putting the papers aside. "I had been rather puzzled as to how we should arrange matters in that respect, anyway, and this is a splendid solution for the present. Will you consent to it, Miss Delight?" Bernice's eyes implored her as she visibly wavered between her allegiance to her foster uncle and prospect of the life with the companion to whom she had become so much attached. But Jerry himself settled the question by pushing her from him toward Bernice and her mother. "You go with them," he bade her. "They're the right ones for you now." Mr. Tredwell got up and came over to Jerry. "There's not the slightest doubt about the identity of my client with the man you cared for in the Glade so long. The writing on these pages of his journal is identical with that of letters bearing his own signature. I can only say now that, though there are many details to be arranged, the future of little Delight Colfax will necessarily be very different from her past. But that does not mean that we intend to separate her from you, Jerry. You have been faithful to the utmost, and such a separation would be more than cruel. We must talk over what arrangements we can make. You do not seem at all well. Will you not allow me to take you to Jasper with us and get you the medical attention you need?" But on this point Jerry was adamant. "No, no, thank you, sir, just the same. But I gotta stay here till I get over this. It'll pass. I've had the same thing afore this. When I can travel again, we'll go back to old Number 6, my wife and me, and stay on there. It suits us, and mebbe sometimes I can see her, little Dell here, just once in so often, so's she won't quite forget me, you know." "There isn't a shadow of doubt," Mr. Tredwell assured him rather huskily, "that she'll want to see you, with extreme regularity." Half an hour later, her belongings all packed in the car and her tearful farewell paid to the guardian who had cared for her so long, Delight Colfax stepped in beside Mrs. Conant and Bernice. As the big motor slid away to the low purr of its perfect mechanism, she leaned out of the car for a good-bye to the still figure seated on the porch. "I'll run down in a day or two and bring you back to Number 6, called back Mr. Tredwell in parting. "And we'll come with him and bring the Ford along to help," sang out Sydney. Bernice, too, had an inspiration. "And Delight and I are going over to Number 6 to get the house all ready for you," she shouted as her contribution. There was something so heartening about these kindly commonplaces that they cleared the atmosphere of the inevitable and the